Hi there everyone, Lars here with another battle analysis from Make the Exorcist Fall in Love, brought to you by Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers, because writing is an adventure, it's more fun with friends. And I am continuing on with my pledge to cover the main fights from Make the Exorcist Fall in Love, and I am coming around to the second major fight between Priest and the Demon Lord of Envy, being Leviathan. This massive battle that honestly actually doesn't take up a whole lot of time between Priest and a shark whale. No, not a whale shark. Those are nice, beautiful creatures of the sea. I'm talking about a shark whale. This thing is monstrous and will devour the entire continent of North America. As per usual with my battle analyses, I want to have a look at what led up to the fight, and not just the fight itself, but its consequences, and what kind of writing advice we can pull from all of this. Now, I'll just say flat out, this is a very brief fight. In terms of the other battles within this manga series, this one doesn't take up a whole lot of time. It really is more about the build-up to this fight that really counts. And that's where a lot of the drama and character development is. And with this particular fight, things are set up for the future. This is just the same as when Priest fought against Greed. There's a lot of stuff that's being put into motion that is meant to pay off later on in the series. So let's have a look at it right here, because this is a fight that I honestly do enjoy, and this is one where, especially if you're buying into the main romance of the series between Priest and Emery, this is where that really begins to kick off. So let's have a look at what leads up to this fight, because no fight is good unless there is proper build-up to it. After the big battle between the Demon Lord of Greed, Mammon, and Priest, things have kind of calmed down. Satan is pressuring Emery to hurry up and seduce the guy so that way he can follow through with his plans by destroying God's #1 weapon on Earth to prevent the apocalypse. Well, Emery, for her part, is like, you know what? That's really not who I am. You put me right into the same house with the most powerful exorcist on the planet. I am going to do things my way, and if I'm going to seduce him, I actually want him to really fall in love with me. And it's interesting because we quickly learn at the opening of this arc that Emery has been in this position before, where she once seduced and truly fell in love with a Catholic priest, and then was found out for being a demon, and was executed shortly thereafter. And it's something that she regrets. She regrets that she didn't say anything in her defense. She regrets that she didn't fight for that particular relationship, because to her, it was genuine. So why didn't she go for it? These memories and dreams of this particular incident lead Emery to decide, you know what? I really need to make a decision regarding Priest. Am I going to open up my heart to him? Is there really anything there between us? Because it's easy to seduce any sort of guy, but falling in love is a completely different matter. And so, Emery begins really exploring who Priest is, getting him to open up to her, building a more intimate relationship. And when I say intimate doesn't just have to be all touchy-feely sexy. Intimate is also personable. It is when you're able to open up your heart and who you really are to someone else, bearing that all to them, so that way you really connect. And just as a quick aside, for any good healthy relationship, that's really honestly what you need. You need to have good communication, good understanding, openness, and honesty between you. Otherwise, it's all just physical, and the physical dulls over time. However, coming in to ruin Emery's plans is the elusive and mysterious Cardinal Heisenberg, the guy who, according to Marco, leads the Not a Fan of Priest Club. Or, as we come to learn as the manga unfolds, he is the political opposition to the Pope within the Vatican. He has a very different view of how the church should be run, how it should interact with the world, how they should be preparing for the upcoming apocalypse, and as such, the Pope wants to keep him at arm's length. strength and make sure that he cannot interfere with Priest's mission. However, Heisenberg happens to have a lot of exorcists and allies under his command, some of whom seem to be good friends of Priest, and so he sends two nuns, two exorcists, named Leah and Barbara, to go in and try to take Imri away from Priest, or at least make sure that they end up taking control of her care, while Priest can still oversee things, but he will be away from the girl. And this is because Heisenberg is actually a very smart and tough cookie, because he's like, wait a second, if we are dealing with Satan right here, and he's targeted this random girl, this is very obviously a trap. And it could very well be that we're dealing with a demon who has learned how to mask their identity. This has happened before. This was how Asmodeus was able to get a jump on Priest and Dante at the very beginning of the manga. So would it not stand to reason that there could be other demons that can do the same? And so Heisenberg is honestly doing the right thing right here in trying to prevent Priest and Imri from remaining together. However, because Leia and Barbara are friends with Priest, they are going to kind of give him a little bit of a softball right here. And they tell Imri, guess what? We're not just going to simply tear you away from Priest immediately. We want you to choose who will be better suited to be your protectors. Let us have a competition right here. And it's a competition that they expect that Priest is going to basically bow out of because they know how he feels around girls. And this is something where Imri's like, wait a second. No, I'm supposed to seduce him. I'm wondering if I can make him fall in love with me. And now we've got these other girls here, and she begins to grow jealous of these nuns because of their relationship with Priest and the long-term relationship that they have with him. Now, it's important for me to go over all of this because it sets the stage for Leviathan's entry, because when they go out to the beach, things happen that are really peculiar, with a ship suddenly sinking, people who need to be saved, a random girl arriving who seems to be marooned from potentially that shipwreck, and it's really Leviathan in disguise. This cute little girl who's really an ancient monster. She's not even herself an angel or a demon. She's just one of God's original creations who threw in her lot with the demons because of, well, things that happened throughout history where people once revered her and now they fear her, and so she went with those who have been rejected by God's children. And as such, she is an absolute outcast, and she's too powerful for her own good. And so she's really separated from everyone else. She envies the connections and relationships others have, and so she wants them, which is why she assumes the appearance of a young girl, a young human girl, and tries to sneak into the competition and become a part of everyday life with Priest Imri and the others. Of course, Imri really quickly discovers this is Lord Leviathan, she shouldn't be here, this is going to cause all kinds of problems, and yet thanks to Priest being the guy that he is, taking this little girl under his wing and his protection, they spend some time together and actually have a good time with each other. Until all the creatures of the ocean react to Leviathan's absence and are like, oh, she's with the most powerful exorcist. What if he discovers who she is? He's going to kill her. And if that happens, one of the original creations of God and our mother is going to be gone. So they then go and attack Priest and the others in order to kill him. And this then kicks off the fight. Now, like I said, this fight is actually really quick because once it becomes clear that this little innocent girl is actually Lord Leviathan, the demon lord of envy, well, the cat's out of the bag and a Priest goes in for the kill. And she transforms. They have a bit of an interesting conversation right here because, well, there is an emotional connection now between the two of them, something that Priest never expected to have with any of the demon lords. But he's seen a different side to envy right here, and that's putting him off of his game a little bit, so much so that he actually has a bit of a conversation with her and agrees to fight her as an equal. And so this means then that she can assume her gigantic shark whale form to fight him, and she lays into him. As one of the original creations, she is big, she is powerful, she is glorious, and even the power of angels basically bounces off of her, and Priest has to allow himself to be swallowed up by envy in order to attack her from within. However, what this means is that he's entering the jaws, the original jaws that led to Gehenna, to hell itself. And he is just wrecked in the flames of hell. And even though he's able to regenerate rather quickly, it takes so much out of him that when he finally rips his way right through Leviathan's throat and falls into the ocean, he can't heal himself fast enough in order to escape the tide that is created, the great whirlpool that is formed by a sudden body just suddenly vanishing, creating this hole in water. Water rushes in to fill the hole and just creates what is effectively a black hole, but really more like a whirlpool that just pulls him under the tide to drown him. In terms of a fight, it's not the biggest, it's not the flashiest really, even though the proportions are huge, but it's just really fast. And there was so much that was being done with the setup, with Imri's schemes, with her trying to fall in love with Priest, with Leia and Barbara trying to take Imri away, with Priest's own conflicted feelings regarding Imri and regarding the little girl, with Envy being there and trying to worm her way into everyone's hearts, and just all this stuff happening. There's so much going on that when we finally get to the fight, it feels a little bit forced. This is where the pacing in the early chapters of Make the Exorcist Fall in Love kind of comes back to bite it in the butt, because if you take the time to properly build up one of these climactic fights, you can really feel the emotion. It took a couple of times of me reading this particular arc to really appreciate what is going on here. Now, when I first read it, I was absolutely sucked up into what happens immediately afterwards between Imri and Priest, and that's because, hey, I'm rooting for this relationship, even though it's absolutely horrible, but hey, I'm here for it. However, to really get Envy's side of things, I had to come back to it a couple of times and really try to identify with this demon lord. And when you begin to understand her isolation, her desire to be amongst other people, and that's why she is the demon lord of envy, it starts to make sense, and you can be like, okay, I actually get what you're doing right here, and I do like it. So, to look at the consequences, why this fight matters. Well, Priest wins the respect and adoration from Lord Leviathan, and she's kind of got a bit of a crush on him going right there, and she is willing only once to pay back his kindness and generosity. Anytime, that is a little rain check right there for the future, so that's something we can look forward to sometime later down the line, where Priest might have to turn to Leviathan to get something done. And Leviathan, for her part, being accepted by Priest, and then being able to accept herself for who she is, for what she is. Interestingly, this actually provides some interesting resolution for a demon of all characters, which goes on to show that even for what Imri is going through, if one monster or demon can find resolution for their arc and can actually find happiness, then that means that others can as well. And as for Imri, she throws herself, despite not being able to swim very well, she throws herself into the ocean with a life preserver to go after Priest and try to save him from being drowned by the consequences of his fight with Lord Leviathan. Well, it doesn't turn out really all that well. In the end, she needs to be rescued, and it's the nuns who actually help bring her back. It's not Priest, so hey, no mouth to mouth, no kiss of life for her, which is really disappointing for her, but it gives her a chance to be there with Priest and to realize that in the face of everything that has just happened, that she does have feelings for this guy right here. That seeing how he was kind to a demon, which from her own experience, religious individuals, the moment that they found out that she was a demon, they went in to kill her. And yet this priest, even though he was fighting for his life against Lord Leviathan, showed her courtesy, showed her some kindness, and a sense of camaraderie even towards the end, despite knowing what she was. And before that, showing his great kindness towards other people in need when he thought that she was just some girl who was shipwrecked and stranded on the beach. Ultimately, there is a goodness to Priest. Yes, there's some naivety to him, but some genuine earnestness and goodness that makes him an attractive fellow to a character like Imri. He is someone who does good things because he actually cares. And as she's gotten to know him before Leah and Barbara showed up and afterwards, there's a lot about this guy that any smart woman would love to have in their man. And so she's now willing to open up her heart to him and to try to win him over. And so after this battle, she makes the first real step in introducing herself all over again and wanting him from this point on to call her by her first name. She wants to know his first name when he's like, you've already read it. It was in the official paperwork when we took you into church custody to protect you. And she's like, no, I want to hear it from you. And he says it. We don't get to hear it or read it. But there's an interesting connection there. Once again, something that will be delivered on later on in the series, no doubt. But Imri then says, I'm not going to call you by that name just yet. I intend to call you by that when I know that you are actually reciprocating the same feelings I have for you. You know, it's some of your typical Japanese romantic fare, but it kind of makes sense for a girl who has been burned throughout the millennia, who has had all different kinds of bad instances with romance up until this point. She's playing it cautiously, and yet she is still opening up herself to a potential romance with her greatest enemy. Woo! Now, a big thing that is also set up during this fight is our next big battle with the third demon lord, Beelzebub, the demon lord of gluttony. And the setup for this comes thanks to Leia and Barbara, because Leia takes on Leviathan head on first, wanting to know if she can take on Leviathan, if that would mean that she's strong enough to fight Beelzebub. Why? Well, because as she's told Imri, why is she a nun? Why is she an exorcist? Because she wants revenge. And that is going to be the third arc. That is going to be the topic of the third battle analysis that I do for Make the Exorcist Fall in Love. And it is one of the most intense arcs within this series. And that is also probably one of the best battles when it comes to depicting religious iconography and demonic powers and all that stuff, really across any story that I've read, because it goes so old school. I am so looking forward to that particular battle, and it's going to be in the month of Thanksgiving when I do it. So for analyzing the fight for the demon lord of greed, or not greed, for gluttony, during Thanksgiving, yeah, that's going to be fun. But let's round this off right here with what we can actually learn from the manga at this point. While I do love Make the Exorcist Fall in Love, right there, I really enjoy this manga. I am also willing to admit where it makes some serious mistakes. The build-up to the fight with Leviathan should have taken more time. The fight itself is actually fine with the pacing and the length that it has, because given what we learn of Leviathan as a monster, really Priest has no hope of defeating her except to basically sacrifice himself by going into her mouth. It's a pretty simple solution to a massive problem, and it doesn't need to be dragged out for too long. However, the emotional impact that fight should have had could only come about if the setup had taken longer. We get plenty of time with Leia and Barbara and with Imri. However, we needed more time with Leviathan to really get to know her more, so that way we could feel that emotional crushing weight when her scheme falls apart and we see what's really been happening with her. And while I understand that we're only being given breadcrumbs right now of Imri's past, it would be good to get more of those breadcrumbs. One of the problems with laying breadcrumbs throughout your story is that if you have too few of them, they come across as just weird ideas that are thrown on out there, and people might not pick up on what you're doing. Now then, Breadcrumb trails are also meant to not be massive lines in the sand pointing you to where you have to go, because you're not trying to telegraph everything, you're trying to set things up. It's a very delicate balance between how heavy-handed and light-handed you're going to be with your hints. However, what I have learned by looking at multiple stories is that you can't just drop 3 or 4 breadcrumbs and hope that people are going to catch on what you're dropping. You have to lay multiple breadcrumbs. In the setup towards the fight with Leviathan, it would have been nice to see a little bit more of these flashbacks and dreams that Imri has to kind of heighten the tension right there. That as far as Imri feels, like with competition with Leviathan, that Leviathan's trying to steal Priest from her, that Leia and Barbara are there to take her away, that this is kind of a moment where if she doesn't open up her heart, if she makes the same mistake as before, she might lose Priest. And one of the reasons why I say this is so important is because when she throws herself into the water to go after Priest to save him, we come back to that dream. Now then, that part was done really, really well. And we see that she's finally making the move. She's making the move that she needed to do in order to save not only herself, but to save the relationship that she has with someone that she loves. That needed to be set up better. Could have been done with just maybe one more dream or flashback sequence. I probably would have preferred 2, just as I said, to again heighten that tension. If you yourself are someone who's trying to lay a series of breadcrumbs for people to follow within your stories, it's something that you are going to have to struggle with on your own. Basically, think about the length of your story. How long is it going to be? When are you beginning to drop these breadcrumbs? And I think you should make it proportional to the length of your story and also in accordance to all the other subplots and characters that you're juggling. And also, just remember this, a fight doesn't need to be super long to be super cool. And this is something I kind of have to remind myself within my own writing. If you've read The Legend of the Ten Lords, which you absolutely should, there's a lot of very long battles within that series. And it's something that I've been told in beta reading is kind of exhausting to read through. The reason why I do have longer battles is because I really want to steep my readers in just how grueling and taxing these fights are. Because even though these people my main characters have the power of imagination, where they can take what they imagine and actually bring it into reality and do all different kinds of things, just because you have those powers doesn't mean that you can resolve a battle with the snap of your fingers, especially if the other people you're fighting against happen to have the same powers. This then means that there is a deadlock of ideas. That means that there is actual strategy, and you're constantly probing, changing, adapting, fighting it out to see who's going to win, and this is going to lead to all kinds of unintended consequences, especially if you're not thinking things through. But that only works for some battles. Other battles should be short, because if you lengthen them out for too long, it just kind of drags on and people begin to realize you could have easily have solved the situation with just doing this one thing or 2 things, which you get in this fight between Priest and Leviathan. Priest comes up with a very good solution to the fight really early on, just after a couple of slashes, because he realizes, yeah, there's no way I'm breaking through Leviathan's hide. I have to sacrifice myself, go into her, and attack her from the inside. Sweet and simple. What we're going to see when we get to the battle with Beelzebub, it's a completely different matter, because Beelzebub is a monster with all kinds of tricks up his sleeve, and there's no easy way to defeat him. So that's going to be a very interesting contrast, and something I'm really looking forward to talking about during Thanksgiving. So that will do it for this fight analysis right here. If you haven't yet checked out Make the Exorcist Fall in Love, please do. It is such a great manga. And it's a manga that I noticed when I was in Japan was put into a place of prominence at one of the local manga shops in Osaka, which I thought was very interesting. I walked right on in, and then boom, right there to the left, on my left-hand side, on the second table, there they were, the volumes for Make the Exorcist Fall in Love. Prominent for the entire store to see right on your way to the checkout counter. So yeah, this is a manga that I don't think people here in the West should be sleeping on, because I think it's one that we can potentially expect an anime adaptation from in the near future. That's currently my guess. But if you're just here looking for more writing insights, analyses, and reviews, then please check out our other videos here on our channel. You can also head on over to our podcast, Camille's Harem. And if you'd like to support what we do here, commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing if you haven't already done so is very much appreciated. But even more so than that, we would absolutely love it if you checked out the books that we have published. Links for them are in the description below. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us on this crazy adventure that we call writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.